in which our happy couples learn that life is not easy, whether as newlyweds or as recent divorcees. Chapter 22. Alexey Alexandrovitch had forgotten Countess Lydia Ivanovna, but she had not forgotten him. At this most difficult moment of lonely despair, she came to see him, and walked into his study unannounced. She found him in the same position in which he had been sitting, resting his head on both hands. "J'ai forcé la consigne," she said, coming in with rapid steps and breathing heavily from agitation and quick movement. "I've heard everything. Alexey Alexandrovitch, my friend," she went on, firmly pressing his hand with both hands and looking into his eyes with her beautiful, pensive eyes. Alexey Alexandrovitch, frowning, got up and, freeing his hand from hers, moved a chair for her. "If you please, Countess, I'm not receiving because I'm ill," he said, and his lips trembled. "My friend," repeated Countess Lydia Ivanovna, not taking her eyes off him, and suddenly the inner tips of her eyebrows rose, forming a triangle on her forehead. Her unattractive yellow face became still more unattractive, but Alexey Alexandrovitch could feel that she pitied him, and was ready to weep. He was deeply moved. He seized her plump hand and began to kiss it. "My friend," she said in a voice faltering with agitation, "you mustn't give way to grief. Your grief is great, but you must find comfort. I'm broken. I'm destroyed. I'm no longer a human being," Alexey Alexandrovitch said, letting go of her hand, but continuing to look into her tear-filled eyes. "My position is the more terrible in that I can find no foothold in myself or anywhere. You will find a foothold. Seek it not in me, though I beg you to believe in my friendship," she said with a sigh. "Our foothold is love, the love that he left us. His burden is light," she said with that rapturous look that Alexey Alexandrovitch knew so well. "He will support you and help you." Though there was in these words that tenderness before her own lofty feelings, and that new, rapturous, mystical mood which had recently spread in Petersburg, and which Alexey Alexandrovitch had considered superfluous, he now found it pleasant to hear. "I'm weak. I'm annihilated. I foresaw nothing, and now I understand nothing. My friend," Lydia Ivanovna repeated. "It's not the loss of what isn't there now. It's not that," Alexey Alexandrovitch went on. "I don't regret it, but I can't help feeling ashamed before people for the position I find myself in. It's wrong, but I can't help it. I can't help it. It was not you who accomplished that lofty act of forgiveness, which I admire along with everyone, but he, dwelling in your heart," Countess Lydia Ivanovna said, raising her eyes rapturously. "And therefore you cannot be ashamed of your action." Alexey Alexandrovitch frowned, and, bending his hands, began cracking his fingers. "One must know all the details, he said in a high voice. There are limits to a man's strength, Countess, and I found the limits of mine. I had to spend the whole day today making arrangements about the house, resulting, he emphasized the word resulting, from my new solitary situation. The servants, the governess, the accounts, these petty flames have burned me up. I couldn't endure it. Over dinner. Yesterday I almost left the dinner table. I couldn't stand the way my son looked at me. He didn't ask me what it all meant, but he wanted to ask, and I couldn't endure that look. He was afraid to look at me. But that's not all. Alexei Alexandrovitch wanted to mention the bill that had been brought to him, but his voice trembled and he stopped. He could not recall that bill on blue paper for a hat and ribbons without pitying himself. I understand, my friend, said Countess Lydia Ivanovna. I understand everything. Help and comfort you will not find in me, but all the same I've come only so as to help you if I can. If I could take from you these petty, humiliating cares. I understand that you need a woman's word, a woman's order. Will you entrust me with it? Alexei Alexandrovitch pressed her hand silently and gratefully. We'll look after Seryozha together. I'm not strong in practical matters, but I'll take it up. I'll be your housekeeper. Don't thank me. It's not I who am doing it. I cannot help thanking you. But, my friend, don't give in to that feeling you spoke of being ashamed of what is the true loftiness of a Christian. He that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And you cannot thank me. You must thank him and ask him for help. In him alone shall we find peace, comfort, salvation, and love, she said, and raising her eyes to heaven began to pray, as Alexei Alexandrovitch understood from her silence. Alexei Alexandrovitch listened to her now, and these expressions that had once seemed not exactly unpleasant, but unnecessary, now seemed natural and comforting. He had not liked the new rapturous spirit. He was a believer who was interested in religion mostly in a political sense, and the new teaching that allowed itself some new interpretations was disagreeable to him on principle, precisely because it opened the door to debate and analysis. His former attitude to this new teaching had been cold and even inimical, and he had never argued with Countess Lydia Ivanovna, who was enthusiastic about it, but had carefully passed over her challenges in silence. But now, for the first time, he listened to her words with pleasure, and did not inwardly object to them. I'm very, very grateful to you, both for your deeds and for your words, he said, when she had finished praying. Countess Lydia Ivanovna once more pressed both her friend's hands. Now I shall get down to work, she said with a smile after a pause, wiping the remaining tears from her face. I'm going to Seryozha. I shall turn to you only in extreme cases. And she got up and went out. Countess Lydia Ivanovna went to Seryozha's room, and there, drenching the boy's frightened cheeks with tears, told him that his father was a saint, and his mother was dead. Countess Lydia Ivanovna kept her promise. She indeed took upon herself all the cares of managing and running Alexei Alexandrovitch's house, but she was not exaggerating when she said that she was not strong in practical matters. All her orders had to be changed. They were unfeasible as they were, and the one who changed them was Kornei, Alexei Alexandrovitch's valet, who, unnoticed by anyone, began to run the entire Karenina household, and, while dressing as master, calmly and carefully reported to him what was needed. But all the same, Lydia Ivanovna's help was in the highest degree effective. She gave Alexei Alexandrovitch moral support in the awareness of her love and respect for him, and especially, as she found it comforting to think, in that she had almost converted him to Christianity, that is, turned him from an indifferent and lazy believer into an ardent and firm adherent of that new explanation of Christian doctrine that had lately spread in Petersburg. Alexey Alexandrovitch easily became convinced of it. Like Lydia Ivanovna and other people who had shared their views, he was totally lacking in depth of imagination, in that inner capacity owing to which the notions evoked by the imagination become so real that they demand to be brought into correspondence with other notions and with reality. He did not see anything impossible or incongruous in the notion that death, which existed for unbelievers, did not exist for him, and that since he possessed the fullest faith, of the measure of which he himself was the judge, there was no sin in his soul, and he already experienced full salvation here on earth. It is true that Alexey Alexandrovitch vaguely sensed the levity and erroneousness of this notion of his faith, and he knew that when, without any thought that his forgiveness was the effect of a higher power, he had given himself to his spontaneous feeling, he had experienced greater happiness than when he thought every moment, as he did now, that Christ lived in his soul, and that by signing papers he was fulfilling his will. But it was necessary for him to think that way. It was so necessary for him, in his humiliation, to possess at least an invented loftiness from which he, despised by everyone, could despise others, that he clung to his imaginary salvation as if it were salvation indeed. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.